Good evening and a very, very warm welcome to my YouTube this evening. We're going to take a look at Squadron Leader Geoffrey Wellum Dfc. With the huge expansion of the RAF in the 1930s came training schemes such as the Short Service Commission, a programme for which Geoffrey Wellum was accepted in the spring of 1939. It is revealing that when asked at his interview at the Air Ministry his reasons for wanting to join up, he replied, "I want to fly aeroplanes, and the RAF is the best way of doing so, and making a career in aviation. That I know. Also, that it won't cost me anything. Money, I mean. It was only when prompted that serving his country and fighting in a war got a mention." By the time Geoffrey Wellum arrived on 92 Squadron in May 1940, he was still only 18 years of age. The commanding officer of 92 Squadron was Roger Bushell, who was a pre-war stalwart of an auxiliary Squadron 601. Bushell was a forceful and well-connected South African-born barrister, and the accounts of many novice airmen of the period suggest that perpetually irascible, real or contrived, was a favoured management technique of the squadron commanders, and Bushell was no exception. He was horrified that Geoffrey had never flown a Spitfire, with which 92 Squadron was now equipped. It would seem logical that the greater your flying experience, the more chance you would have of surviving and succeeding, but as Geoffrey Wellum pointed out, the truth was that no amount of training can prepare you for mortal combat.
Well, the Spitfire outside the chapel is mine. It's one of these big plastic things, but I was there when it was dedicated. It's my Spitfire that I flew in the battle there initially, QJK, and the serial number's K9998. I can remember it. And there's a plaque underneath it that it was my aeroplane that I flew from there when I was in 92. I feel very privileged to have fought and operated from a frontline fighter station. It's not about medals. It's not about thank yous. But it's nice to be remembered, because being remembered covers everybody who served, flew and fought in the Battle of Britain. Covers everybody. And that is all we ask, is to be remembered. That's all. You could see the balloons in the Thames estuary over to the right on a clear day. You could see London. You were doing what Fighter Command was all about. You were defending our country against the King's enemies, against an utterly ruthless enemy. And it was very, very real indeed. Smoke trails, tracers, twisting and whirling of aeroplanes in a sort of vast panorama of blue sky with the green fields of England below. And once you could extricate yourself from all this milling going on, twisting and whirling of aeroplanes, and once you could get away from it and you were out of ammunition, then you had to get back to Biggin, and there it was, war-torn. So there was no let-up. There was no let-up. This was war. You were so absorbed with flying and fighting the aeroplane that's all you could think about at the time. It was always, I always felt that you had to keep a very good lookout, but I always felt that if I could see my antagonist, I could outfly him in a Spitfire. And that was the big thing. See him, outfly him, fight him, and then at the end of it all, you might land and think, well, that stopped him. But when you're up there in combat, all you thought about was aeroplane to aeroplane. Letting the 109 shoot me down didn't appeal to me at all. You just went for him. Somehow the squadron had to get airborne very quickly. We went up through a little bit of cloud and we got separated. And I was number 2 to Brian, and I was hanging on to him. And the two of us were going up there, climbing like bats out of hell, because we never really had enough time to get up to them. We weren't scrambled enough. And I can remember seeing Brian up there, and he looked at me, and the controller came on, and I can hear him now. Bill Igo, his name was. Brian was leading. He's a Garrick leader, 150 plus, Dungeness, Vector so-and-so, Buster. And I looked ahead, and there was this massive aircraft, again, like gnats on a summer evening with 109s above. And I'd never seen so many of them. And Brian and I were underneath them, were climbing up for a head-on attack. And, I sat there and I thought, well, what the hell do I do now? Where do you start on this lot? Well, the first thing, Jeff, is to turn your gun button to fire, because if you don't, it won't go bang. And I did that, and I tightened my straps. I can feel it. Got down behind the armour-plated glass in the armour, and we went straight into them.
By this stage, of course, another war was fast approaching. And yet, to Geoffrey Wellum and many like him, the prospect seemed strangely unreal. Few of the letters and diaries of airmen during this period make much mention of the political or military situation, even though it was obvious that when the fighting started, they would be pitched instantly into battle. Geoffrey Wellum was not alone in regretting that a machine that can impart such a glorious feeling of sheer joy and beauty has got to be used to fight somebody.
Keith Park was right out of the top drawer.
He used to visit us quite often. He came in very informally in his Hurricane and find out how we were getting on.
He was an approachable man and a fighting man's man.
He led from the front at Keith Park, and he was a very fine air officer commanding.
Because you've got to hurtle off into your machine.
You raced out to your aircraft, climbed aboard, your parachute was in position, so you buckled that up as fast as you could, you pulled the straps over and pushed in the pin.
Start up and taxi out.
And then you get 12 Spitfires all sort of warming up, and you think, well, it's a bit ominous, someone's going to buy it this day.
As we were forming up, we'd get over the tannoy system. 603 Squadron, please get into the air as soon as possible.
Now the takeoff. Throttle right forward. Stick central.
The first time I went into serious action was against 150 plus. That's a lot of airplanes. And they were coming in over Dungeness, and I saw them in the distance like a lot of gnats going around on a summer evening, with 109s above. When you saw that lot, you thought, well, where do we start on this lot?
It was quite overwhelming in that you weren't quite sure the best way to attack them.
We're not the only ones making some serious mistakes.
One of our great problems at the beginning of the war is we were not trained as well as the Germans. Our tactics were out of date. We used to fly type formations, which was absolute asking for murder, and we got the chop left, right and centre.
Pilots were taught to fly in close formations of 3, called Vics. This required great skill, but was useless in a dogfight.
Of course, all the time you were doing that, you weren't looking round. You were looking at your leader. You never took your eyes off him. And if he missed something, then as a wingman, you got clobbered. I was quite convinced, all 19 years old of me, that we were right, and that Park was right, and that we, by going in small batches and hitting them, going back, going away if you got away with it, and then going back and doing it again, I'm convinced that was the right way to do it. If you're going to form up a wing, you can't just do it like that. It takes time, and time's not on your side. You've got to stop them getting to the target, not hit them after they've got to the target and gone back.
I'm reading from the closing pages of Geoffrey Wellum's best-selling book, First Light. And it goes like this, as Geoffrey explains. It seems longer, but 6 weeks ago I landed back in England from Malta, exhausted, both mentally and physically. I had no reserves left. I was sent home on sick leave, and there was my room waiting for me, just as I'd left it over 3 years ago, clean, dusted and polished, nothing out of place. Something inside me gave way, and I stretched out on this same familiar comfy bed and broke down. I grieved for my lost friends in the squadron, and I cursed that I had reached the pinnacle of my life before the age of 22. I'd gone over the top. A medal and a royal handshake didn't seem important anymore. 2 full tours on Spitfires, the Battle of Britain, and nearly 100 escorts and fighter sweeps over occupied France. I felt destroyed by the war. Slowly, however, rest and quiet helped a young body recuperate. I put on an old pair of slacks and an open neck shirt, and I went for a long walk in the forest, followed by a quick pint in the local. I found an old fishing rod, and I went down to the lake. Nobody about, and I watched the little red float and relaxed. One day, it bobbed under the surface. I pulled the line, and there was some sort of small fish on the end. The improvement continued, and I began to feel I wanted to fly again. So I went up to London and attended the medical board. They passed me fit to fly, and my old instructor from Dford was in postings, and I went to see him. It was a happy reunion, the outcome of which was a secondment to the Gloucester Aircraft Company as a production test pilot, and here I am. Compared to the sleek Spitfire, the Typhoon looks a great hunk of an aeroplane. I pause for a moment and take a look at the brand new Typhoon standing out in the sunlight waiting for me. I'm back with aeroplanes again. Without realising it, when I arrived at the Typhoon, and after a look around to see if it's got 2 of everything, I clamber up the tall side and into the cockpit. Home again, the smell, the instruments, they're all there to greet me. Strapped in, I looked at the small white clouds against the blue summer sky. I'm back. Hold on, little clouds. I'll be up there in a minute. Clear to start. Contact.
Or rather casual, really. Just as if you got off the 6:50 from Waterloo after a busy day at the office. You left the White Hart and went straight back down to dispersal, and then started all over again. So those hours at the White Hart were, let's hope we can get there tomorrow, that sort of thing. Well, I loved a pint of beer, and I still do, but if I could get it, a Scotch, I got warned off, actually, because in the battle, I probably started to drink a little bit too much. While you sort of missed and were very aware of, shall we say, absent friends at the end of a day, you didn't let your imagination run away with you. If you did, you might just as well plunge a thing into the deck and kill yourself. No, you had to do it day after day after day.
I really hope you found that interesting. It's been quite difficult to pack the life and times of Geoffrey Wellum into a very, very short film, and I hope it gets across the bravery and the courage that these young men went through. I wish you all the very best, take the greatest care, and I look forward to seeing you on the next film. All the very best. Cheers for now.